All right, welcome to another episode of Slate Against the Machine. This is the podcast of Fae Pictures, where we share with you everything we know and perhaps some of the stuff we don't. Today, we're going to focus on we've talked about why would you make a short film and what would you do with it once you've made it. Now we want to dive a little bit more deeply into the process of developing and then producing and delivering a short film. So just to remind Fae Pictures, we are a production company and our mission is to decolonize Hollywood. And we'd love to share with you what we know, and get you to join us in this mission. Let's start by having all of us introduce ourselves. I'm Lisa Valencia Svensson. I'm the VP of Finance here, and I've had a background in documentary film production for 20 years. And I'll head it over to Shant, our fearless leader.
I am Shant Joshi. I'm president of Fae Pictures. I've been behind such projects as In Flames and Framing Agnes, and I also teach at York University, production management. Yeah.
Wonderful. Going clockwise for me, Leonard.
Hello, I'm Leonard Chan. I'm the director of development at Fae Pictures. I'm a stand-up comedian, also a writer, and a terrible actor, but I do it anyways.
Nice. Lindsay.
Hey, I'm Lindsay Blair Goldner. I'm the VP of production at Fae Pictures. I've been producing for 8 years. I started in the commercial world. Now I work in narrative and episodic. I'm best known maybe for a movie called I Like Movies. And I'm an occasional TikToker and occasional karaoke host here in Brooklyn.
Wonderful. And now over to you, Abdul.
The glamorous world in which we all talk about how we work in the film industry and then all of our other jobs. I am Abdul. I am the VP of production at Fae Pictures, and my other life, I'm just a writer.
VP of production?
Of development. Sorry.
I like how we do production jobs we don't even have.
Just went with it.
Look at me. I'm the producer now. Yeah. No, I'm the VP of development at Fae Pictures. I am also a writer. That's my main job, and I am currently bottom ranked in my Lorcana league, which, even if I was top ranked, I wouldn't make money off of it. This is all I got, baby. It's this or bust. It's this or walking into the ocean with rocks in my pocket. You know what I'm talking about?
We all know what you're talking about.
Yeah. All right, so let's get going. Let's start talking about short films and developing and producing them. I guess we start with developing them, and who would like to start talking about this?
So, hypothetically, let's say you have a banger idea, right? Like, Leonard and I are the two writers here. Let's say your idea is a film in which you murder 20,000 elephants.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say you come up with this great idea where, like, I don't know, like, you're a European country, let's call it Denmark, and you want to kill 20,000 elephants. Yeah. Now you might ask
because
yourself,
they've been sent to you.
You guys are really butchering this synopsis right now.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, this is not how to pitch a short film.
Yeah.
Listen,
all right.
We were sitting around. We're like, think of this. Think of, Operation Dumbo Drop. Remember that? Now think about Operation Drop Dumbo. Like, this is
yeah. So, like, that's sort of it. So let's say, like, Leonard and I are sitting around over beers or something, and we come up with this idea where it's like, European country kills 20,000 elephants just for kicks, and we're like, damn, this would make a great short film. And also, it would make a great short film if you didn't see the elephants. Like, what if we sold this thing on the promise of elephants and never showed you the elephants, right?
Yeah, that's
what
key.
would you do? Key. Yeah, what would you do next, Leonard? Like, what would be the process of, like, how we would refine this idea into something that...
so all the listeners understand what is happening right now.
No, it's funnier if you don't explain it, Sean. It's 10 times better if you don't.
No explanation. The way you don't see elephants, like you do not see an explanation
for the last 2+ weeks. Abdul and Leonard have been hazing Lindsay and I about a book that we both were pitched really well. It was, and the book was not
beautifully pitched.
We heard a really great pitch for a book, which was not about killing 20,000 elephants. It was about the Chancellor of Germany waking up one morning only to find 20,000 elephants in Berlin, and how he had to deal with it because he just passed a UN resolution, nay-naying Botswana for having hunting practices against elephants. And the president of Botswana was like, here, take 20,000 elephants, deal with it without having to kill them. So it's a comedy of errors as these Berliners have to try and deal with these elephants without killing them, basically. See, that's a better pitch. It's not the best pitch.
I mean, it still sounds like the most boring film I've ever heard. But
but we're focused on developing it now, not yet.
Yeah,
so now we have.
And by the way, this is not a short film. This is a bigger idea. This is a broader, larger idea that I think.
But we have the idea.
So Leonard, we have this idea for a long form movie, right? Yeah. But we wanted proof of concept it with a short. You know what I mean?
Let's do that.
So how would we then keep developing the idea of okay, we have this big movie about elephants. What's the how do you narrow in on that to make it work in 9 minutes and not put people to sleep?
Yeah. I mean, I would think about, characters, obviously. You need to know who we're following in this story. And then you start designing, the narrative. If you're trying to distill a feature into this, it's how do we capture the essence of the feature, right?
Yeah, how do we capture the essence of elephant murder is really the question we're asking. And it's, I think, something that a lot of really great shorts do. And Whiplash, we talked about Whiplash in the last episode as an example of this, is that they'll take a moment from the larger picture and they'll actually sort of turn that into a short, right? A rushing or dragging scene from Whiplash, the movie became the short film, really. And especially with shorts, they don't have to be the feature film version condensed into 10 minutes. They just have to be the idea condensed into a shorter time, right? It's a place where you can think of it as a playground for images, for ideas, for things that give you the feeling or emotional and thematic question, how do I most effectively massacre 20,000 elephants? In this very sharp, tuned, what is the image that represents the elephants, right? What is the emotional movement, the single thing people will think about when they leave that theater? And that's also the thing you want to protect in that short.
Mm-hmm.
The short should also have a 3-act structure, right? And that's critical. Even though it's a smaller part of a larger thing, it still needs that beginning, middle, and end. People hear that all the time. It's such a cliched thing to say, but it's also at the same time so true. Sometimes you'll see a short film and it'll only have just the beginning and it'll just end on its own, or you'll have a short where it's just only ending, basically. You need a short that has your beginning, middle, and end, and you need to be able to communicate that as a filmmaker. You'll be able to communicate what is your beginning, what is your middle, what is your end. So let's figure out what are and usually it's more helpful to figure out your beginning and your end, and then figure out your middle in between.
So in a situation like this, right? If we were to develop this idea out, you don't have to give a lot of prefacing. You know what I mean? It can be as simple as a Danish politician or a Dutch politician sitting in an office, and his president gives him a rocket launcher and says, there are 20,000 shells inside this rocket launcher. Go forth and murder elephants, right? And it's well, you could build the whole thing in that office, right? Building it around them having a question of philosophy around, and make it feel intense and sharp and sort of Sorkin-esque, but around the ethics of killing 20,000 elephants. Yeah. And then I can already tell you the final moment is this guy steps out with the rocket launcher. You don't see the elephant, but you close in on his face as he lifts the rocket launcher. there's your first extreme close-up in the movie, and off-screen you hear the elephant's pained cries, and then you cut to black, right? Like, the elephant knows what's coming for it. He's made the decision.
What is the arc? So back to Leonard's point about character. You've got the Prime Minister giving it to who? He gives the bazooka to who?
His Minister of Defense, right?
So the Minister of Defense seems to be our main character. That seems to be the person who's going to undergo what we call an arc. I don't know, Leonard, if you want to talk about what that arc's going to look like for this character.
Yeah, so the arc for the character will, of course, depend upon what our thematic argument is. Like, and like I said before, every project, whether it's short or a feature, it should have a thematic question, like something where you're like, you know, where there's an argument to be had, right? Like, you know, for example, in like Finding Nemo, like the thematic question is like, oh, you should let your kids, you know, free so that they can experience life.
You need
to let your kids go, right?
Yeah.
And so that's basically like, so you need something there. It's like where it's like, we need to kill elephants, you know, for the greater good. And sure, there's some argument there, right? So you can have that philosophical argument between our Minister of Elephant Defense and whatever. And so, but the arc, where whatever side of the thematic question we land on, as we're like, this is what we want to say, because you should have an answer to the question, then you have to design the arc around that question. So like basically your character at the beginning. And there's two ways to go about it, actually, because you can have your character where it's like, is he steadfast in killing elephants this whole time and the world changes around him? Or was he not quite there yet? And then he gets there at the end where he's like, gotta kill the elephants. And then you decide what is the journey, right? Yeah.
So, and the interesting thing, Leonard, this is a great example of like circularity in storytelling, because at the beginning, he could be on the phone with his daughter before he walks into the Prime Minister's office, and then they're talking about something. You don't know what it is. Immediate intrigue. They walk into the office. The office looks great. Beautifully designed, single location. He gets handed the bazooka. His daughter calls him again. Then you realize he's actually about to like give the okay to like put the family dog down, right? And then all of a sudden, there's something that catalyzes his question about the elephant. And then the Prime Minister, who's always the counter narrative, the antagonistic opposite, right, is like, but you have to kill the elephants.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be here, right? And all that stuff. Like you can.
They're a problem. They keep biting people.
And your second act is the debate. Your second act is that conversation in terms of what are your other options. You're trying to achieve a goal. The goal being you need to get the elephants. The elephants are destroying public property. You need to stop the elephants from destroying all this public property, and you need to stop them by any means necessary. And so that trajectory that you take to get to finally going outside with the bazooka is trying to go through every alternative decision, basically, to be like, what if we try this? What if we try this? What if we try this?
But then you want to think about the
failures. Yeah.
But then you want to think about the other layer, which is, okay, this guy's got problems at home. We got the bare minimum of information we need to care and understand where his mental state is at. But then you're also looking at the antagonist in front of him, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe other characters who might be walking in and out, like signing the order to kill the elephants. Like,
yeah, each of whom represent a different facet of the theme.
Yeah, and it's like, well, what's the history between these two guys? What is the deal being put on the table? If you personally murder 20,000 elephants, what will you get out of it that will materially impact you, that then speaks to all the other stuff that's happening in your life, right? Like, Whiplash is actually a great example of this because he wants to be great. You know what I mean? He wants to be, and this is like someone arguing with him, being like, you want to be great? Give up everything else about yourself and do it in this moment. Like, there's a great short film from a couple of years ago called Curfew, which won an Oscar. It's a long short. It's like 35 minutes long. But it's a great example of like, well, how do you put your own problems aside for someone else, right? Like, the idea is this simple. And here it's like, you know, how do I murder a pachyderm for the betterment of my country and my people and the society we live in?
Yeah. And I think we try to like explore that theme through like what Abdul was saying, like through these, like, who are these people? What are their wants? What are their needs? Like, And then that's, and oftentimes like you try to design a narrative where it's like they have a want and then they go towards that want. They make choices to get them closer to that want, and there's obstacles in the way of that want, and then along the way they figure out what they need, and oftentimes they have to sacrifice that want to get what they need.
This is like a very silly thing to say almost, but like shorts usually don't have posters attached. They usually use a still from the movie.
Yeah. And
like really think about what that still from the movie is as you're like as you're writing it. You know what I mean? As you're working on it. Like what is that image that will make people look at it and say, I want to see this movie, and that sort of distills a core idea of the movie around it, right?
Yeah, and I can see in this movie, like maybe he's like standing in his office, and there's a window nearby, and then the sunlight's coming through, and there's a shadow of an elephant, and he's standing in the shadow of the elephant. Boom, and that is your still. That if you can capture that image, that is your poster right there.
This is why we write well together, Leonard. Like this is and so then it's like, okay, you have those two pieces, and all of this is communicable on one page, by the way. When you're showing it to people, when you're pitching people the idea, when you're writing the script, you can put all of this on one page, but then you need to get to the climax, right? And the climax is like, well, he's contemplated murdering elephants. He's turned against it. He started in a place where he was gung-ho about killing elephants. Well, then the cost, right? Like, what is the outcome? The outcome is he's still going to kill the elephant. Actually, we don't know because that final shot might be a little more ambiguous. But we think he's going to do it, but he's going to do it with a sense of loss and pathos. And what does that look like as it relates to his conflict with the Prime Minister of Elephant Killing Land, right?
Maybe... plot twist, he turns the bazooka back towards the building, and the building is, guess what? The Reichstag.
And then we realize it's a fucking metaphor.
Wow.
You know what I mean? That's the twist ending you don't want.
That's the real elephant in the room was Nazis. Apparently, it was Nazis the entire time.
Horror shorts like live and die on twist endings. I think dramatic shorts usually don't. But you do want that like strong climax, that sense of like everything's about to collapse, right? In a certain sense, like it could be as simple as like an elephant you never see crashing through the building, like the wall collapses, some sort of gag that you put half your budget on screen for that really makes the audience feel like, what the hell? And then the Prime Minister, and his, with this is the bad version, with the piece of wood or the tusk through him after the elephant stomped off, telling him, like, sometimes you got to put the elephant down, right? And he walks through the rubble and sees the elephant, sights it in the bazooka, cut to black. Yeah, and like, those are the types of things. Maybe he has to kill the Prime Minister to put him out of his pain, right?
Yep.
Now, this is all very instructive. We're not always completely needing to follow a 3-act structure, though, isn't it? Some people are like, let's decolonize storytelling and not always be stuck in this very Western European approach to what a storytelling structure is. Are there any other? It still needs structure, and it still needs to move shape. And all the rest. It needs shape.
Let's partition shape and structure. I do find that story, like, I mean, it does need structure, but structure is oftentimes a thing you kind of like analyze after the fact.
I mean,
it does need a recognizable shape.
Let's talk about like the best narrative, non-narrative short film ever made, right? Like La Jetée is a great example of like, it has a beginning, middle, and end, but it's a film told in strange sequences and still images. The image of the woman blinking or whatever is such a profound like thing to look at. And it's like, it sort of draws you in through throwing a lot of big ideas at you, but also, it still does have like a very clearly defined beginning, middle, and end, which I like about it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a film about acts. Granted, would La Jetée get into Sundance if it was made today? Who knows? I'm not Chris Marker. But like,
Yeah, but they had a very clear, like La Jetée had a very clear, like idea of what it was about, and they really managed to. I mean,
the thing is,
it's all still photos, and it's like a time loop.
Confidence is such a big thing with shorts. Sorry, Shant. Like, there's a great joke that's like, how many first-time directors does it take to change a light bulb? I don't know. What do you think? And like, people do not respect someone who doesn't know their idea. Like, your crew won't respect you. You know, strong choices, even if they're not the right choice, strong choices always win. You know what I mean? Sorry, Shant, continue, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe it's confidence for sure. I mean, obviously you need confidence going into production, but I don't know the story of how La Jetée got made, but very well and very oftentimes a lot of films get discovered in the edit. I mean, obviously Star Wars famously got discovered in the edit. And
the producer's telling us to fix it in post?
No, not fix it in post, but rather discover your film. I mean, even we had our film. No, framing Agnes. A lot of it was we had the bones of it. We had the pieces. We knew we had the pieces. I think it's just sort of like putting it in a certain sequence, understanding, edit theory. What's that German editing theory? The montage theory. All those kind of things, like understanding the craft of cinema and being able to sometimes figure out, you may not necessarily figure out your film in production. Ideally, you're figuring it out in development. I mean, that's always an ideal scenario. But sometimes you've written something, you're confident enough, you go to production with it, you come back with footage that may or may not work, and you got to figure out how to make it work.
But the difference with Framing Agnes is that when we saw those early cuts of Framing Agnes, like, you knew the ideas were there. Like, you wasn't discovering the idea, it was the form and expression of those ideas that needed to be refined. But the core ideas, concepts, and narrative, like, structure of the film was pretty intact, like, I would say from go, right? It's like you knew what you wanted to make. You just realized it needed to be shaped differently in the edit. And I think that that's really key, is like understanding this is the film you want to make, and this is the idea you want to express, and this is the A, B, and C of how you want to put it together. You know what I mean?
There is a saying, however, in the practice of filmmaking, that a film is not finished being written until the edit is done.
Right.
So I get what Shant was trying to touch on, which is just that development is so important. It's so integral to the process. But even in production, things change due to whatever logistics, whatever it may be. And then that happens a whole lot in the edit room too. So technically the writing of the story is not done until the film is like
you're missing the crucial you're missing the crucial middle though, which we haven't talked about yet, which is producing the Dead Elephant movie.
Let's get into we've developed our idea sufficiently, and now it's time for production. Lindsay, maybe you're starting us off on this.
Okay.
As New York noises come through the background.
The people on the street, how are we going to make a movie?
That's New York, baby.
That's New York, baby.
Hey,
I'm producing
I'm killing
here.
elephants over here. Yeah.
Hey, I'm trying to be on a podcast over here. Yeah. So you have your idea, you have your project. I mean, where do we want to start with producing? Do we want to talk about like getting it financed or the actual legs of production?
I think beyond financing, because we just talked about financing on the last episode. It's sort of, you've got this larger concept, and I guess, guys, do we want to stick with we don't have a director here, obviously, we're all producers here. Right. But do we want to stick with this idea that we never see the elephants on screen? Or
for simplicity, let's do that, because I don't think any of us know about the production logistics of elephants.
Yes. Yeah. Let's skip the elephants. So Lindsay,
there's no animal wrangler that I can call in Ontario that'll have elephants.
As I pitched, basically, it's like Shin Godzilla with elephants in Weimar, Germany. There we go.
Okay. So we're going to skip financing. The script is great. We've attached a director. Ideally, there's already a producer, or we're not talking about the scenario where a production company is like looking at the project and assessing it for viability. That's already happened. I think the key thing about putting kind of everything into motion is, one, first of all, finding a producer that you trust. A lot of the time, if you're making a film, especially one like this, that's say, it's an ambitious idea and you have to get this point across without ever showing the elephant. Have you seen a film that's tried to do something similar, had a similar gag, something involved that like helps you to kind of direct who am I going to go after to help put this project together? Because a lot of the time everyone says it's who you know. So you're going to go to your DP friend and ask them if they're available. You're going to go to your, location sound friend and ask them if they're available. But I really think there is value to being a cinephile, first and foremost. So being a cinephile can actually really help inform the production process if you're watching a lot of films and reading the credits and understanding, okay, these are people who work on the specific type of movie I'm working on. So in the scenario where you're putting together a short film that has essentially what is a gag, right? Where it's an elephant movie without any elephants. There is an element of, I guess, a surprise. There's a comedic tone. It's great to work with people who've worked in that arena before. I think research and development on crew and the work of crew that you like, especially from a director standpoint, you're going to want to know the visual elements that you're seeking. It's really helpful to communicate that in advance during the development process by making a deck. So that way, when you're onboarding crew and sending out the script to them, you can also share a kind of visual reference. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time people use stills for movies that they already know to help communicate the kind of look and feel that they want to create for their short film. For anything, really. It's so helpful to reference other movies. So step one for production, be a cinephile and know what you like and what you want your film to look like. Mm-hmm. But then the first real step to production is building a budget, right? What do you do with that script? First thing you have to do is break it down. There's going to be like a million tutorials if you're listening to this podcast on like how to break down a script, but the OG way is printing it out and getting a bunch of different colored highlighters to earmark various elements of the script, locations, characters, props. These are things that are going to be directly affecting your budget. So ideally in the scenario, you have a great line producer who loves the script, loves the visual treatment. And the first thing they do is they sit down and they break down the script. Once that happens, they can actually put those elements into budget form. So I think that also is part of the creative process because putting those elements into a budget actually allows you to visualize how the project will come together. Oh, there's a number of funny props we have to get. So we're going to need like a prop master, someone specific to that. Oh, the script has a lot of like funny sound effects. We're going to want to make sure that we have a section budgeted for Foley. Everything in the script that's communicated in the script, you're going to want to make sure is outlined somewhere or communicated through your budget. And I think part of that process and part of what makes it really creative and really fun as someone who has a background in line producing is when you get to sit down with the director after doing your first pass of a budget on a project, going through it line by line and saying, is this how you envision this scene happening? I imagine 25 background performers, whatever it may be, talking that through with your director, because that essentially gives you a guideline for what you're going to do next. Who are you hiring and how are you casting?
And I would say that the two biggest factors towards towards the budget, especially when it comes to short films, are, and even this also applies to features as well, is how many days do you have, and what are your locations, right? Your schedule hugely informs. It depends. I mean, whether you're paying your crew or you're not. If you're paying your crew, those are definitely important line items, and obviously, or not obviously, but if you're paying your crew, at what point do you hit overtime? Are you doing a daily rate? Are you doing a flat rate? At what point are they like, I got to go home, I got to go to bed because we're going to be back on set tomorrow? So understanding your schedule in terms of how many days do you have available to you, and then as well, what are the locations that do you have access to, right? Mm-hmm. Is it something that you have access? Is it a location that your parents own or your family owns, or is it a location that you have to go out and you have to negotiate a deal? Is it a location that's owned by the government? Do you have to go to get a city permit, or do you have to work with a private individual? And is it private land that you have to deal with an individual and negotiate a deal? What are the bargaining chips you have available to you in terms of managing that location's budget, and then ultimately how that affects how many days you have? Even if your crew isn't getting paid, you're still feeding your crew. So ideally, you're still paying for every day of meals and every day of every day of equipment, every day of meals, every day of transportation. All those things pile up the more number of days you that pass by. And so understanding your schedule is going to be huge in terms of understanding where your budget lands. And, are you going to save some money by cutting a day, or are you going to save some money by cutting a scene?
Yeah. The nice thing is elephants work for peanuts. So
I'd say there's two non-negotiables in your crewing strategy that I think you really have to keep in mind, which is having a line producer and having a first assistant director. Those two people alone you should be working with to create that budget and create that schedule that Shant's talking about based on the budget and based on those creative elements in the script. That's not to say that, the filmmaker at home listening to this can't do that stuff themselves. And certainly I think it's to the advantage of a writer-director to understand the scope of their project and to maybe have already done a breakdown themselves to really know what they're kind of getting into, what they're offering to bring people on board for. But I do think those are non-negotiable hires. Definitely have someone whose only job it is to create that budget, look over it and maintain it, and a first AD to help you create that schedule, because they will also know the ins and outs of rules about OT that you don't have to become an expert on your first short film.
Now, there are so many things. That was phenomenal. I hope everyone was taking lots of notes. Of course, there's so much to talk about in the production process, but I'm going to move us a little bit now into post-production, if I may, just in the interest of time. Post-production and the focus, again, on a short film. I don't know if you want to continue with your presentation, Lindsay, because we're all listening with a lot of attention, or anyone else wants to start.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw it to Shant too, just to vary it up. But I think with short films, it's really up to the individual. A lot of directors also edit out of necessity because maybe at that point in the production process, you don't have any more budget to hire someone. Or maybe you do, and that's an excellent thing to have because they can even start working on it as soon as you're done, right? Whereas if you're the director, the writer, the producer, and the editor, you might want to take some time. So I think the editing and post process is entirely up to what you can afford, right? I think with a lot of the shorts that we work on, we're lucky that we're making sure we have money available to us to not only have, of course, an editor, but like a whole post pipeline that takes us through the online to DCP and delivery. But Shant, I don't know if you want to jump in on what that looks like.
I mean, I think this is the value. Ideally, we're bringing as producers is we bring a certain level of structure to the process, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in situations or I've seen my students just sort of like, they have a high level of structure and a high level of structure and logistics when it comes to production. And then as soon as it's wrapped, it's like you're so exhausted, you don't even think about what's your edit schedule, when are you getting your rough cut, when are you getting your picture lock. And granted, obviously with short films, there's no one that's like, with the money, with the dollar sign, that's like, all right, you got to deliver by X number of X dates so that I can make my money back, right? Because when it comes to features or TV shows, when you start production, you got to end at some point, and then you got to deliver at some point. And the delivery date is hugely monumental because it triggers financing, and it also triggers the product that ultimately will go out there and will be monetized by whether it's your broadcaster or whether it's your investor when it comes to feature film. Whereas with short films, if it's grants or if it's your rich uncle or it's your credit card or it's your own money, you as the director, and hopefully you're working with a producer, don't have any sort of gun to your heads in terms of like, you got to get this finished by this date. I think the only real structure that you can think about and really, I think, focus in on is your festival strategy. Is when do you want to deliver in time to submit for X festival that you want to premiere at? If your deadline is getting the film ready for Sundance, it doesn't mean you finish your cut 2 weeks before the Sundance deadline. It means you give yourself enough time to finish your cut, get into color, get into sound, deliver and deliver a quality product. I mean, yes, you could send a cut of your short film, and yes, maybe a Sundance programmer is like, oh, this cut is fantastic. But ultimately, you want to give yourself enough time to be able to put your best foot forward, which means, I think we've seen it so often where it's like once you wrap, you sit down, you're like, all right, let's just edit this thing. And it takes forever. So it's always helpful, I think, to create structure. Set a deadline for yourself. When is your rough cut going to come in? And who are you going to show it to? I think a lot of times filmmakers, they start editing and then they don't show it to anyone until it's so edited out that it's like, oh no, I'm nearly picture locked at this point, and you're not really in a place where you can sort of go back and rethink about your film. So building your brain trust in terms of, all right, we're going into my edit at this rough cut stage. This is my deadline. This is my date of rough cut. I have 6 people lined up who are going to watch my rough cut and give me feedback, detailed feedback. People who I trust sending this raw material to, basically, because your rough cut is raw material, right? I mean, obviously, I think even before the rough cut, you got to think about your assembly. You got to think about your logging, your footage, all that kind of stuff. And something I've also seen a lot of times on short films is watch your dailies. Did your sound sync well? So many times I've been in situations where you finish shooting, you've gone into the edit, you're sort of waiting around, and then 2-3 weeks after production, after everything's been delivered, after like your cast have gone away, your crew are off doing something else, you realize, oh, we didn't record sound on this one take, or we didn't record sound on this one day. And you find yourself in a situation where you can't go back and rebuild it. Whereas if you're watching your dailies the day after you've wrapped, basically, maybe the props are still available. Maybe the set dressing is still, maybe the actor is still available. Maybe you can come back in a week later and do a pickup shoot and pick up what you need to pick up. I mean, definitely there's also situations where you get into the rough cut and then you're picking up stuff, you set up a pickup shoot a couple weeks later. I mean, do you want to talk about some pickup shoots? I think the pickup shoot we did for Queen Ted's a good example of when we went into the edit and we were editing while we were shooting, and we decided we were going to do a pickup shoot a couple months after we'd finished production.
Yeah, these have happened a few times where you see what you've ended up with and it's just not workable. And actually, there was another one that I did a short last year where what we shot during our 4-day shoot absolutely made no sense in the edit. And we were shooting in a strip club. So we had to contact a studio to recreate the lighting of the strip club, because the club was very difficult to work in for obvious reasons, and kind of create that element.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you should also definitely mention, Lindsay, is like postmortems and cost assessments. Like, where did we incur insurance? Like, where did things go wrong? Like, these are learning experiences for the next one too, right? Like, I remember you had that whole issue with like load in, load out locations on the Curfew, right?
Totally. Yeah. Just to wrap this up, talking about postmortem, when you're done your production, sitting down with your team, like your HODs, but specifically your director with your first AD and your line producer, and going over where did certain line items go over? What did we miss? I think it's such a helpful practice because it allows you to kind of look ahead for the next production, understanding where you may have misstepped on the previous one, and making sure that you're getting enough coverage in case of certain missteps that you might have made based on your previous experience. So always good to do.
Excellent. Well, this is so not the end of what we have to say. It's just the start. But it is the end of what we have to say in this episode.
And 20,000 elephants.
It is the end of 20,000 elephants. It's an elephant graveyard, if you will.
Thanks goodness. But we're going to finish up with our usual end bit called What Have We Been Watching? And today we feature the wonderfully hatted Abdul.
What have I been watching? The Oilers lost. I have not been. Oh, actually, 2 things. I watched Good Boy, which I think is so actually relevant to this conversation, because like Good Boy is an example of like, it's not a short, but it is like a 0 budget horror film made over 400 days with the director's own dog. for basically no money on the location they just had access to and weekends where they could shoot. And it has blown up the world. It's like a film that is exactly one idea, is 70 minutes long, and knows how to execute that idea about as well as the idea could be executed no matter the budget level. It helps to have a really cute dog in your movie or a really doe-eyed elephant. But like, Good Boy was excellent, with respect to like no budget, micro budget filmmaking. And then also a game came out called Subway Builder. If you are autistic, you need to play this game. You need to, like, it is like autism catnip. It is ruining my life. Highly recommend Subway Builder. It's $30 American. It's not on Steam yet. Just Google Subway Builder game. I am currently building an Austin metro system that is losing so much money, but I'm having so much fun.
It comes with a free bottle of Tylenol.
It's on browser?
No, it's like you can download it for Mac or Windows, but like, dude, it is incredible. It is like, it's developed by a guy who does like urban data visualization as his job. And so it's like really, really good at like just getting those like, again, those really train-loving synapses of my neurodivergent brain firing, if you catch my drift, as a fellow traveler, Shant.
Traveler by subway.
Traveler by subway. On that note, we are going to wrap this episode of Slate Against the Machine. But first, Shant, how does everyone follow Fae Pictures on the socials?
At Fae Pictures, and usually we mostly spend our time on Instagram and on TikTok, so that's where to find us. And you can follow me at Shant Joshi 95.
Great, thank you, everyone. Now you all are going to go out and make some fabulous films about elephants, and we will see you all in the next episode.
And build excellent subway systems, I hope.
I just downloaded it. I just bought it. I'm going to download it.
Amazing. I'm so happy.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.